Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Mayor Tyzik, members of the City Council. Thank you for hosting this wonderful group of people this evening. I feel very comfortable here because I see so many people that have come to our workshops and graduated from our training program, and we've got our own corporation council, our graduate Paul Ackerman here tonight. The mayor's a member, as your city manager is, of our Mayor's Redevelopment Roundtable, and we're very happy to be here in this place this evening. This is a very good time for cities in our country. If you've been following, excuse me, if you've been following the trends, people want to live in cities. There's a new demography that's developing in our country. People are coming back to cities. People of all ages are beginning to look for city locations. The real estate market is looking better in cities comparatively with suburbs and rural areas. And the reason for that is because cities have very, very strong assets. And we're very aware of the fact that that applies to your city of Poughkeepsie, because you've got these incredible development projects on the waterfront. You've got the Huffman House. You've got so much going on at Vassar Hospital. You've got millions of dollars being invested in real estate and development in the city. And I just talked to Gary Beck, the building inspector here, who told me that last year you had 1,600 building permits issued. And Paul told me that the planning board is a busy planning board as compared to other planning boards that are sitting on their hands waiting for the recession to get over. So there are a lot of very good things happening in the city of Poughkeepsie. But cities around the country who are experiencing a bit of revitalization like this are also very aware, as the mayor has just said, you and your city council are, that you have to look at the distressed properties. You have to look at the vacant and abandoned properties, the properties that are not pulling their own weight, the properties that are a drag on the tax base of the communities and create other problems. So nearly every city that's developing it on the waterfront in the downtown, which by the way you're doing very well as well, is also paying attention to what it can do with its distressed properties. So we're here tonight to talk about the problems and the questions that people are asking. And by and large, these questions on this slide are the questions that people around the country that Jessica mentioned and this movement that's going on to remediate distressed properties are asking. What property conditions concern you in your city? If there aren't any, we don't generally go there. What causes these problems? What should be done about these problems? And what are the priorities? And those questions are the questions that we're going to be asking you in the session that we're going to have immediately after this brief look at the kinds of things that cities are doing around the United States. In our view, and I think, Mary, you might agree, that this, quote, problem of distressed properties is really an opportunity. It's an opportunity for so many different things. It's a development opportunity, an investment opportunity, an opportunity to reinvest and to increase the tax base. It's an opportunity to capture some new open space resources, to create jobs for people in their local workforce. And it's part of the green infrastructure that cities are beginning to develop. We've done a lot of work on gray infrastructure development in cities, and now cities are thinking about the green infrastructure, the vegetation that needs to exist, the enlargement of the tree canopy in cities. This can be all done through distressed property remediation. It can enhance the safety of neighborhoods and create livable neighborhoods. So we don't go into this thinking that distressed properties are just a problem, but rather an opportunity for cities to embrace. Now, some of the steps, as Jessica said, we don't have a prescription. There is no silver bullet approach to this. There's the Poughkeepsie solution that your city council, your mayor, your department heads, your staff, and your citizens and your leadership will develop for itself. But these are some of the steps that communities are beginning to take. They're starting, and the mayor's already told us a little bit about the inventory of properties. The city knows how many distressed properties there are and where they're located, what categories they fall into. You kind of begin with that because that does give you the size and shape of the breadbox within which you're working. And then you create some kind of a policy. Policies can be put together in a number of ways, but a policy is necessary just to say we're headed in this direction. We're all going to look at this place on the horizon, and we're going to work toward that place. Very importantly, and tonight's meeting really kicks us off, Securing public support is one of the critical aspects of distressed property remediation throughout the United States, where there have been successes. So we're here tonight to begin to ask these questions of you and to begin to develop priorities for action that are appropriate in the city of Poughkeepsie. There has to be a plan developed. We can't do everything that we want to do. Not every single neighborhood can be repaired in the short term. So targets are selected and resources are gathered and funding is pointed at those particular targets. And then we have to look at and improve the regulatory environment. We have to acquire, maintain, and repair certain properties, and then some properties need to be demolished. That may be a source of jobs, and that may also be a source for green infrastructure going forward. And then some properties that are acquired have to be disposed of. And by the way, our perspective about all of these things is that the private sector comes first. Private owners come first. The people who own properties come first. The people who occupy properties currently come first. We don't suggest the city take over the business of running real estate only in default situations. So all of these strategies need to be worked around the investment, the taxes that are being paid by, the management expertise, and the commitment of people to their properties who are already here. Now in Richmond, you can see that this is just one of numerous slides that I happen to pick out of our collection. Here's a city that did an inventory, solicited community input, got a direction, started to move toward that spot. They picked 6 neighborhoods to focus on, and then they took a variety of funding sources and aimed those sources at these particular neighborhoods. Now, we're involved, Jessica mentioned that we're involved in Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon seems to be moving toward a sort of a scattered site, individual property approach, because they're looking at the surrounding properties and how a distressed property might be a drag on the value of those properties, leading to a diminution of the tax base. And so they've got a bit of a different idea about exactly how to target. In Newburgh, we have one large target neighborhood, which happens to be the historic district. So let's go up back to the beginning, and I'll just move, I'll move quickly here because I think, Tiffany, we need to get back on schedule. We were a little bit delayed for a very good reason tonight, and that is that you all came, and we wanted to wait until you showed up. So at the policy setting level, in some cities, the mayor will adopt a proclamation or an executive order, or the city council will adopt a resolution or some combination of both of those and say, this is where we're headed. You can count on the city to be your partners in this. Some cities create task forces to begin to integrate all of those private sector and public resources that are necessary to do the kind of planning with other boards that has to be done. Area conditions are assessed and target actions are decided, again beginning with an inventory of what is available for this great opportunity that distressed properties give us. And then tools and techniques are selected that are appropriate for those particular targets. So we move into the planning phase, and we put a lot of stock in the local comprehensive plan. We'd like to have you take a look at your comprehensive plan and see if it recognizes the issue of distressed properties and their reclamation to the city, and if not, we look to see whether or not there ought to be a component added to the comprehensive plan. Again, that's something around which citizens can organize themselves and be helpful to the city council and the planning board in determining what that component of the comprehensive plan should look like. And again, there are other aspects. Integrating code enforcement into the plan is important. Getting the major stakeholders involved in the plan is all part of the planning phase. And then we move to the regulatory phase, where we look at the property maintenance code, and I think a lot of work has already been done in the city of Poughkeepsie. At the regulatory level, there are a wide variety of regulations that can be adopted. One of the problems often is we don't know who's responsible for some of the properties that are causing problems, and you can create a registry, and you can enforce the registry, and you can know who's responsible, and you can hold them accountable. You see down at the bottom, this business of discipline and consistency is very important. Property owners have to know that they're in charge, they're respected, their investment is being respected, but they have to follow the regulations of the city, and there has to be a consistency and discipline to that process. That we sometimes get involved with the court system because judicial enforcement is very important. So this regulatory phase is very important, and we'll be talking about that as we move ahead. You can see in the next slide that all of these cities on the right here have set up some kind of, click it again, Mike, if you would, have set up some kind of a vacant property registration ordinance that follows some of these. One city we know of does, in fact, several cities have a graduated registration fee, so that the longer your property is vacant and abandoned, the higher that fee is. That creates a little bit of discipline. There are some penalties that we can look at, but again, our approach is to take an incentive approach to the extent that we can. But these registration ordinances figure very centrally in a lot of cities that have done a good job of remediating distressed properties. In some cities, and this is the underlying approach that Newburgh is taking, they emphasize property acquisition. You've all heard, I think maybe many of you have heard about the new land bank legislation in the state of New York. Newburgh is going to the state, to the Empire State Development Corporation, and asking to be designated as a land bank. The land bank will take title to properties. This is again a kind of a last resort approach to grabbing properties and pulling them into ownership that can be responsible. Tax foreclosed properties go there, abandoned properties, properties that are already owned by the municipalities go there. Some properties have been condemned for blight. Other properties have not paid certain fees that are required, and liens are placed on those properties, and cities are beginning to acquire some of those properties. And working with existing institutions, existing neighbors, existing investors, and not-for-profits, and sometimes the city itself, these properties can be captured by responsible ownership and put back on the tax rolls. Some properties need to be maintained and repaired in the process. Again, the private sector can be encouraged to do that, but sometimes cities have their own repair and maintenance programs, and they begin to create jobs through those repair and maintenance. Some buildings have to be boarded up just to be deemed safe, and again, cities have the power to do that if they choose to make that one of their priorities. So you identify funding sources for property maintenance and repair, provide incentives, and try to get some of the properties to be repaired through the existing ownership or through city action itself. Unfortunately, some properties have to be demolished. We're working very carefully on a very constrained approach to that in the city of Newburgh. And one of the things that we're learning is that too can be an opportunity, because the demolition of existing unsafe structures that really cannot be restored can create open spaces, can create jobs, and we can do deconstruction of properties that have valuable assets there, valuable features, and take those features and resell them and integrate them back into reconstruction projects. So there can be a lot of good that can come out of a very targeted demolition initiative. And then we go to property disposition. To the extent that there have been properties acquired by not-for-profits or a land bank or the city itself, we've got to get them back out. There are public auctions that can be taken, that can take care of that. You can bundle certain properties at public auction and create a kind of an incentive for certain investors to come in. You can do public auctions on conditions so that you're sure that people who take these properties are going to meet the conditions that the city wants to have met. When people take title from the city or from other sellers, and then there can be the creation of this land bank or another not-for-profit to hold and dispose of properties that are acquired by the city. And then very importantly, other actions begin to be catapulted off of this program. I love this slide because one of the things that is bringing people back to cities is transit. And this is not a value statement, it's just a simple statement of fact. I read yesterday that in the city of Chicago, people who live near transit are saving $10,000 a year because they don't have to have that second car. They don't have to pay that second insurance policy. They don't have to pay those repair bills. Transportation costs are getting to be 20 to 25 to 30% of certain household budgets. So this idea that we can pull some transit into the process and begin to think about where there's enough density to support buses and other types of conveyances, it really is something that can be integrated like brownfield redevelopment and infrastructure improvements and street design and stormwater management and green utilities. So there's an opportunity here to begin to look at the other good initiatives that the city has at its call and begin to look at them. And then this slide I also like because it shows that there are a variety of ways of creating green space in cities in places where there were vacant and empty and highly deteriorated buildings before. And then finally, job creation. When you begin to look holistically at a city, obviously the people who live in the city need jobs. The people in the city need incomes. They need incomes to pay for their homes and for their rent and for their groceries and to support local merchants. And so one of the things that a lot of cities are doing is saying, how can we look at this demolition, this repair, this maintenance, this reconstruction effort that we're going to be generating, not to mention all the terrific new construction that's going on in the city of Poughkeepsie, and create jobs for our workforce so that that can happen. And there are many, many different opportunities for those kinds of benefits to occur. So our final slide here contains the questions that you will soon be asked by my colleague Tiffany Zazula and her facilitators, her team of facilitators. We want you to think about these questions, and by the end of the evening, we'd like to have a little bit of direction from you as to where you think the city should go. Tiff, do you want to take it from there? Tiffany Zazula.
So I'm going to be the person who finally tells you what you're doing with those dots, essentially, that was on your agenda. Well, thank you all again for attending tonight. What we want to do is now break everybody up into smaller groups so that we can have a discussion with all of you regarding, obviously, this subject matter. Each of you hopefully have an agenda that we gave to you that have 3 colored dots on top. What I'm going to ask you to do is, I'm going to ask my facilitators at first to stand up and identify themselves as I would say their names. And I will assign each facilitator essentially a colored dot, We're going to be moving into the cafeteria to do this so that we can all get seated. There's coffee, there's water, brownies, things to hopefully entice you over there. What you do is you just come right out the double doors here or the exit. You head right down the hall and we'll lead you over there, okay? And then when you hit the end of the hall, take a left and you'll see the cafeteria. You'll see everyone going that direction. But so we're going to be heading into that there. Hold on one second. The bathrooms, for those of you who've been asking, they're across from the main office, and there's also some bathrooms near the cafeteria. We will be asking you these, as John said, these